For more than 1,000 years, one city stood as the unconquerable heart of the world. Behind its walls sheltered the last fragment of the Roman Empire, and no enemy had ever broken through. They called it the Queen of Cities, Constantinople, where Europe touched Asia, where emperors ruled in gold, and where the dream of Rome refused to die. But in the spring of 1453, a young sultan stood across the water, staring at those ancient walls. He had come to do what no conqueror in all of history had ever done. He was just 21 years old, and he had brought with him a weapon so monstrous it would change the meaning of war forever. This is the story of 53 days that ended the Middle Ages, and the last stand of an empire that had endured for 11 centuries. To understand its fall, you must first understand what was being lost. The city was founded in the year 330 by the Emperor Constantine the Great on a peninsula where the waters of the Bosphorus met the Sea of Marmara. There he built a new Rome, a capital to rule the eastern half of the empire. And while the west crumbled and Rome itself was sacked, the Eastern Empire endured. For centuries, Constantinople was the richest and largest city in the Christian world, its markets overflowing with silk, spices, and gold from every corner of the known earth. At its heart stood Hagia Sophia, the Church of Holy Wisdom, the largest cathedral on the planet. Its vast dome seemed to float on light, and visitors said they could not tell whether they stood on earth or in heaven. But the city's true marvel was the wall that wrapped around it, the greatest fortification the world had ever seen. They were called the Theodosian Walls, and they were not one wall, but three, set one behind the other. A deep moat, an outer wall, and a towering inner rampart nearly 40 feet high. Any attacker first had to cross the moat under a storm of arrows, then breach the outer wall, only to face the far greater wall waiting silently behind it. Wave after wave of enemies had broken against these defenses. Persians, Avars, Arabs, and Rus had all come, and all had failed. For more than 1,000 years, the walls held, and the city became a symbol of permanence itself, a place that simply could not fall. Yet by the 15th century, the empire behind the walls was dying. Centuries of war, plague, and betrayal had bled it dry. And in the year 1204, even fellow Christians had sacked the city during the Fourth Crusade. Around this fading island of Rome, a new power had risen. The Ottoman Empire, young and hungry, now surrounded Constantinople on almost every side. In 1451, a new sultan came to the Ottoman throne. His name was Mehmed II, and he was just 19 years old. Many underestimated him, seeing only a boy who could be managed like his gentler father before him. They were catastrophically wrong. Mehmed was brilliant, ruthless, and consumed by a single overwhelming ambition. He would take Constantinople, and the city that had defied conquerors for 1,000 years would become the capital of his empire. It was said he sketched maps of the walls and dreamed of them at night. First, he would choke the city. In 1452, he built a fortress on the European shore of the Bosphorus, at the narrowest point of the strait. The locals named it the Throat Cutter, and from its towers Ottoman cannon could now sink any ship that tried to bring help or grain to the city. When a Venetian vessel tried to run past the guns, it was blown out of the water and its captain executed, a brutal warning to all who would defy the Sultan. But the walls still remained, and no army had ever broken them. To shatter 1,000 years of stone, Mehmed needed something the world had never seen. The answer came in the form of a man, a cannon founder named Orban. Strangely, he had first offered his services to the Christian Emperor of Constantinople, but the dying empire had no money to pay him, so he went to the Sultan instead. Mehmed asked him a single question. Could he cast a gun large enough to smash the great walls themselves? Orban swore he could build a weapon whose stone shot could bring down the very walls of Babylon, and Mehmed gave him everything he asked for. What Orban built was a monster, the largest cannon the world had ever known. In the early days of April 1453, the great army arrived, spreading across the hills before the land walls in a sea of tents and banners. Mehmed had gathered perhaps 80,000 fighting men, and some accounts claim far more. Against them stood the defenders of the city, only around 7,000, and many of them not even Greeks. The last emperor had begged Christendom for aid, but from the west arrived only a few hundred volunteers, Genoese and Venetian fighters. At their head was a famous soldier from Genoa, Giovanni Giustiniani, who came with 700 men and was an expert in the defense of walls. The grateful emperor placed him in command of the land defenses, where the assault would be fiercest. And the emperor himself was Constantine XI, the last in a line of Roman emperors stretching back 1,500 years. By a strange turn of fate, the first emperor to build the city had been a Constantine. And now a Constantine would fight to keep it. He was offered the chance to flee and rule elsewhere in safety, but he refused, choosing to stand and die with his city if he must. When the Sultan offered to spare his life and his people if he surrendered, Constantine answered that he would give up anything but the city, for his people would rather die than yield. And so, on the 6th of April, the great guns opened fire. The first shots smashed into stone that had stood for 1,000 years. And slowly, day by day, the ancient ramparts began to crack and crumble. There was one direction. The city still felt safe. To the north lay a deep inlet called the Golden Horn, the city's protected harbor, and across its mouth stretched the most famous defense of all. A massive iron chain had been drawn across the entrance, floating on great wooden barrels, and the Ottoman ships could not break it. So long as the Golden Horn was safe, the defenders could focus on the land walls. Then Mehmed conceived a plan of breathtaking audacity. If his ships could not pass through the chain, he would carry them over the land. Behind the hills, hidden from the city, his men built a road of greased wooden planks running from the Bosphorus, up over the heights and down to the harbor. On a single night, the impossible happened. Teams of oxen and soldiers hauled some 70 ships up the slope on rollers slick with grease, and by morning, the stunned defenders woke to find an Ottoman fleet floating inside the Golden Horn. The great chain had been rendered useless. The Ottomans dug tunnels to collapse the walls from below, and the defenders fought brutal battles in the dark beneath the earth. They built a great siege tower, and in a daring night raid, the defenders destroyed it with fire. Inside the city, the people carried sacred icons through the streets and gathered in the churches, begging heaven for deliverance. And as the siege reached its climax, strange signs filled the sky. By late May, Mehmed knew the moment had come. He gathered his commanders and announced there would be one final, overwhelming assault. He rode through his camp, promising his soldiers 3 days to plunder the legendary riches of the city. And that night, the Ottoman camp blazed with fires in the beat of drums. Inside the walls, emperor and people gathered in Hagia Sophia, where Greeks and Latins who had long been divided prayed together one last time. Constantine told his commanders they fought for their faith, their homes, and their families, and that history would remember this day forever. Then he rode to the walls to take his place among his men. In the darkest hours before sunrise on the 29th of May, the attack began. With a deafening roar, The entire Ottoman army surged forward at once. Mehmed sent his forces in waves, designed to wear the defenders down. First came the irregulars, hurled against the walls in their thousands and thrown back with terrible losses, their true purpose to exhaust the men on the ramparts. Next came the disciplined soldiers of Anatolia, and the fighting grew savage along the broken outer walls, the dead piling up in the moat. Then Mehmed unleashed his finest warriors, the elite of his army. The Janissaries advanced in perfect order, the deadliest soldiers in the world, and threw themselves at the weakest point in the walls. For a moment, the line held even against them, the fate of an empire hanging on a few hundred desperate men. Then disaster struck. Giovanni Giustiniani, the brilliant commander of the walls, was gravely wounded and carried from the fighting. And as their leader vanished, the spirit of the defenders began to break. At that very moment, fate dealt a second cruel blow. A small gate, the Kirkoporta, had been left unlocked. A band of Ottoman soldiers found it open, poured through, climbed a tower, and raised their banner high above the wall. The cry went up that the city was breached, and panic spread like wildfire, until the line that had held for 53 days finally shattered. The emperor saw that all was lost. He did not flee. According to legend, Constantine tore off the purple regalia that marked him as emperor, refusing to be taken alive as a captive king, and as an ordinary soldier, he drew his sword and charged into the heart of the enemy. He vanished into the chaos of battle and was never seen again. The body of the last Roman emperor was never certainly found. He simply disappeared into history and into legend, and after 1,500 years, the line of Roman emperors ended in the press of an unknown melee. Many mark this single day as the end of the Middle Ages and the dawn of a new age. With the old trade routes now in Ottoman hands, Europe turned its gaze to the open sea, and the search for new paths to the riches of the East would soon send ships toward an unknown continent and change the world forever.